Well, guys, 2017 is coming to a close, and thank God for that, because there were many low points in the year that I could go on and on about, but I won't, because this year there were a ton of movies that I was excited as hell to see, and thank goodness the majority of them did not disappoint. Now, what you're going to see on this list are a bunch of movies that do have a bigger budget, Hollywood-level actors and special effects, but they tell their story in a more artistic, different, and just unconventional way than most blockbusters of that kind. And before we get into those, I do have a few honorable mentions. Wind River, Split, The Shape of Water, Gilbert, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, and these next two are only honorable mentions because they're technically 2016 movies, but I only got to see them in January when they got a wider release. A Monster Calls is one of the most mature, emotional kids films I've seen in a long time, and Silence was such a good movie that if it were released in 2017 as opposed to 2016, it would have made my top 3 list for sure. Alright, let's kick things off with number 10. Now look, do I know a ton about the Detroit riots or the Algiers motel incident in real life? No, I don't. And even the director and writer acknowledged that some of the events in this movie are based on eyewitness accounts at best. But as a movie that tries to analyze why these riots occurred in the first place as they're unfolding, it did such a better job than most true-life stories about race that I've seen in a long time. Kathryn Bigelow's direction was intense and made me feel as if I actually was watching real-life events being reenacted. And the performances were all top-notch, especially Algie Smith and Will Poulter. And the movie's not afraid to say that even though the police acted unethically and irresponsibly, there were some black people who, whether they were victims or not, their actions could have escalated the riots further as opposed to trying to bring them to a halt or a conclusion. That's not an easy thing to say. That takes a lot of guts, and Kathryn Bigelow and her screenwriter Mark Boal did a great job. Only the Brave pays tribute to the Granite Mountain hotshots with the utmost respect. There didn't need to be these melodramatic character arcs about their girlfriends or wives or their whole life stories told through flashbacks. It just needed to represent them as everyday people who love to hang out with each other and take their jobs seriously. The dialogue is full of conversations that sound so realistic. I can actually see myself joking around with my own friends just like that. And it's those conversations that make you appreciate these people when their lives are in danger. It Comes at Night was a psychological horror that felt unique in the fact that the things that scare you the most in this movie are the things that you don't know. How many people in this world have this deadly virus? Who are the guests that we're keeping in our house? What kind of secrets are they keeping, and do they have to do with the virus in any way? And these characters never actually see the truth for themselves. All they can do is peek behind a wall or a door and make assumptions that could be wrong. These are risks that most horror movies or thrillers don't take anymore, and in this case, it's one of those movies where it's scarier to guess what the truth is because it builds up the tension, and once you find out what's true and what's not, that release of the tension makes it all the more scarier. I've always wanted to see the behind-the-scenes story of The Room, and I'm glad James Franco did such a good job recreating it as truthfully as he could. He gave a spot-on impression as Tommy Wiseau, did a great directing job too, and Dave Franco actually proves that he doesn't have to be an idiot or a douchebag in every movie that he's in. The Disaster Artist was funny as hell when it made fun of how bad The Room was, but even more amazing, you can actually root for the fact that these guys just want to make their own movie, and despite everything, you can relate to how they completed the movie their way without anyone interfering with their vision. The Last Jedi felt like a bigger step up from The Force Awakens in that it took more risks and fleshed out the newer characters to show us why they act the way that they do, while still furthering older characters like Luke and Leia to show the struggles that they've had to overcome in between Return of the Jedi and The Force Awakens. And fans appreciated it so much that they're petitioning to remove it from the canon. But as for me, I love the main storyline, the performances, the amazing action scenes, the themes about the relationships between students and teachers, and Rian Johnson directed all of that beautifully. Now, I gotta be honest, I wasn't actually a fan of the original 1990s It, so I think I had higher expectations than everyone else when I found out that they were remaking it. But that doesn't change the fact that I had a blast with this movie. There were so many technical aspects that I just appreciated so much, like the eerie score, the cinematography that keeps you guessing whether it is watching them or not, the performances from the Losers Club, which are all really good, and the themes about loss of innocence and survival, things that, cleverly, the kids have in common with it. And Bill Skarsgård. Man, I am not afraid of clowns at all, but he scared the shit out of me. Okay, I don't know if everyone wants me to address the elephant in the room, but either way, let's just take his trunk off someone else's junk.
Oh, fuck.
There. Now, about the movie. Baby Driver does have a conventional story and characters that we've seen in other movies like Drive, Heat, and Straight Time, but it's Edgar Wright's style that makes it feel so fresh and unique. The amount of effort that went into choreographing and syncing almost the entire movie to the soundtrack, the effort goes to show on screen throughout the entire movie, and whenever I rewatch it, there's always a perfectly timed moment or sound effect that I didn't even notice the first or second time. The car chases were exciting to watch, they were full of practical effects, the actors were all fun to watch, and Baby as an action hero is just so cool. I am so glad I didn't see any trailers for Blade Runner 2049 before I went and saw it. Denis Villeneuve's direction was unbelievable. He knows how to tell the story visually first, dialogue second, and he and the cinematographer Roger Deakins, who, by the way, he needs to get an Oscar for this. They keep the beautiful film noir style that the original movie had, and if you ask me, the unpredictable mystery, the Oscar-worthy special effects and set design, the few but intense action scenes, and the performances by Ryan Gosling, Ana de Armas, and Harrison Ford make this movie far superior to the original. Blade Runner 2049 stands on its own as a sequel, and just as a movie. Making a war movie about a conflict between humans and apes and expecting us to root for the apes, many of whom can only speak in sign language, is not an easy task. But War for the Planet of the Apes really pulled it off. This is my favorite of the reboot trilogy, and this trilogy itself is just one of my favorites in a long time. We would not have been able to appreciate these characters like Caesar and Maurice if it weren't for the flawless motion capture effects that are convincing 100% throughout the entire movie, and the actors behind those performances who are so committed that we can understand what they're thinking just by looking into their eyes, let alone listening to what they're saying. And if Andy Serkis doesn't get as much of an Oscar nomination for this movie, social media, myself included, will go apeshit. Logan gave me everything I wanted to see in a superhero movie, in an R-rated superhero movie, and in Hugh Jackman's final performance as Wolverine, which honestly was my favorite of his as this character. Daphne Keane as X-23 was so badass, and I hope we get to see more of her in this role in the future. I felt so sad for the Professor seeing him at his lowest point in life, and I gotta give major credit to Patrick Stewart for that. The action scenes were insane, gritty, had fluid fight choreography, had the actors doing most of their own stunts in real locations. I even own Logan on black and white, which, in my opinion, makes it look even better. The shadows and the contrast add a lot to the shots and these characters who are all at their lowest point in lives and are wondering what they're going to do next. And it even made the villains, who are so thinly developed, actually look menacing and frightening with those exact same features. What else can I say other than Logan is my favorite movie of 2017. Guys, thanks as always for watching. Be sure to stay tuned. Tomorrow I'm going to be putting on my worst of the year list. Now, here's my question to you. What were your favorite movies of the year? And whatever they are, be sure to let me know in the comments below. Be sure to like, subscribe, check out my other reviews at noperfectmovie.com. And once again, thank you all very much for watching. Take care.